this Heckscher business, it's wild. It's
a real business.
Like someone's got to write a book about this. I have so many questions now. Like you've opened my mind to so many things.
None of your business, Oshi.
None of your business, Michael.
It's the None of Your Business podcast, hosted by Michael and Oshi.
Welcome back, everybody, to another amazing episode of the None of Your Business podcast. Thank you again to the Prime Source production team for such wonderful output that we've been seeing and witnessing, and all the growth that we've had, and the comments and the likes and the comments when people roll down their windows, the comments when people go to you at the gym, the comments when people are negative or positive. We're loving it all. And today we have an amazing guest with us, Oshi. I don't think you know Rabbi Senter, but Rabbi Ari Senter is not only the leader of a nationally recognized Kosher certified organization, if that's the right way to put it, he's also the leader and founder of a local Shul. I always wondered, Rabbi, which one brings you more headaches? And and today we could talk about a little bit about where this all came from, how it started. I know a little bit about Kof-K, and I know that some restaurants have certifications of different organizations throughout the world. I don't know why. I don't understand why there's a need of a Kof-K if there's an OU, and why there's an OU if there's a Kof-K. And I understand why there's a need of shuls in a neighborhood, even though there's 5 within walking distance of yours. But would love to learn more about who you are and where you're from, and especially for Oshi, because he doesn't really know you. So that's
Zero.
Awesome.
I'm a little embarrassed, I'll be honest. I feel like I should know you a little bit better. Maybe I even popped into your shul once or twice. I think I attended a bris there at one point. But like your face, I didn't recognize you when I walked in. And I live in the neighborhood for so long, and I heard your name many times. So I definitely should know you a little bit more. So when I heard you coming on the podcast, I was excited to learn about Rabbi Senter, and I did not know that you're part of this Kof-K organization. I'm also excited to hear about how it all works in the background, like the mechanics of giving hechsherim to stores, because, there's money involved. I'm sure people are monetizing from this, but it's a very delicate topic. It's not to be taken lightly. So I'd love to hear how all of that works. So I'm excited to get started.
So let's get going. What's your first question?
I have a lot of questions that happens to me. I'm curious about my first question to you. What gives you more headaches?
What gives me more headaches? Whew.
You could also throw in family if that gives you headaches, or friends.
No, I was asking specifically.
It doesn't have to be. What gives you headaches in life?
Let's just give you an out. You could say none of your business too to any one of our questions. Yes, you get one of none of your business.
But only one time, so use it carefully.
Oh, I only get one.
That's it. You got one pass.
That's the rule?
Yeah, one pass. And everything else you have to answer.
Oh, okay.
Honestly.
I got it. Okay. So what gives me more headaches? I think I would reframe the question. Life has its challenges. And in the end, I think most of us are looking for something to be relevant. And if everything was smooth and everything was easy, then that's not what we're here for. And I'm going to answer your question, I think, in the following fashion. If you get to know me, I'm not your average Joe. I'm not your average rabbi. And I think if I thought that everything was just run-of-the-mill, then in truth, I don't necessarily need it. In other words, I have so many different things in my life that are taking my time and my efforts. I hope and I'd like to believe, if you speak to my congregants and to the people involved, that there's somehow I uniquely have a unique relationship with them. And so it's challenging because, yes, I feel their emotions, I feel their life's challenges. But at the same time, it's rewarding to know that hopefully I've uniquely affected them. I have a unique relationship with them. And I think you know that from my balabatim, that I really do look at them as an extended members of my family. So,
well, you started the whole thing, didn't you?
No.
No?
No. The background of the shul was I was very happily an 11th grade Rebbe in Rabbi Radinsky's yeshiva. I was living on Mariner Way. And the shul started in Gavril, I think. No, it started in Yonah Rothman's house.
Oh, it was a break-off of a break-off?
No, it was a brand new community. It was a bunch of young guys, brand new community, starting from scratch.
Got it.
And basically, they formed a shul, and they were having rabbis coming in once a month. No, just initially it was just to speak and to...
Oh, I see.
Voluntary to be able to do it. So I had done it a couple of times. And actually, they initially asked me to come for Yom Noraim. At that point in time, we were in the basement of a of Gabriel Alexander's house. That was an important lesson because it was an unfinished basement. It was a concrete wall. And I remember one of the Balabatim came up to me and he said, "Rabbi, get used to it. You're going to be talking to a bunch of brick walls." That was a very interesting introduction to the Rabbanis. And in truth, I said no. They offered me after the Yom Noraim to become the rabbi. And I said no, and as you said, I think Uri Krishna is the one who put me in this seat. Uri Krishna recommended me. Uri asked me then to become rabbi, and at that point in time, I had enough things juggling in my life.
He must really love you.
Yes. I had enough things juggling in my life that it wasn't something that I necessarily needed.
Yeah.
And then a year later, a full year later, they went through a whole year of probing and choosing and whatever, so on and so forth. A year later, they asked me again to come for the Yom Noraim. Came for the Yom Noraim, and then the second time around, Uri, with input from Rabbi Dintzig and so on and so forth, actually convinced me to take the job.
How many years ago was this that you started? You took the job?
This is 20 some odd years ago.
Wow, a long time ago.
Yeah, I've been the only Rav of that shul.
And you never had a vision of becoming a Rav. It wasn't in your life's plan. This all developed on its own, and it just one day the thought came up.
So let me answer that question. So I am somewhat following after similar life paths as my father. My father was a Rav of a shul. Now, part of maybe my initial apprehension, my father was a Rav of a shul for many years, and then eventually he left the shul. He voluntarily left the shul. The shul had grown perhaps beyond what he can do because of his other responsibilities in terms of kashrus. So, to me, I was always a little bit apprehensive. My father put a huge amount into effort into the shul, and then in the end, he was no longer part of that shul. There are great people that are involved. There's no ill will, but the reality is he put in all that effort, and then in the end, he had to walk away from it. So that, to me, put me on a little bit of
the weary list.
A weary list before starting. Yeah. But yes, did I dream about it? It was not necessarily what I dreamt about, but a lot of my life experiences were being the child of a rabbi of a shul. As I grew up, my father was the Rav of the shul.
Mm-hmm. And did you immediately take to the job? Did you like it from the start, or did you very early on ask yourself, why did I do this? What do I need this for?
No, I like people. I liked it from the beginning. I like people. I enjoy people. I interact with people. It's the people aspect of the shul was always a good part of the shul. The challenges is, life has its challenges, and being able to deal with people and to actually deal with their challenges, which took a tremendous emotional toll. So that's the balance of it. The balance of it, I am not very good at having that degree of separation. It's not one of my...
You're all in.
I try.
Yeah, I know for my shul where I daven, I have a relationship with my Rav, with the rabbi of the shul, for 20 plus years, since I'm a teenager. I had a relationship with him, and I've kept it ever since. And similarly to how your neighborhood started the shul, we as well. A couple of guys moved to a neighborhood. There weren't a lot of Jews living there at the time, and then slowly started building. Yeah, we realized, we need a shul. And we solicited him to come and to become the rabbi, and he was hesitant in the beginning. He wasn't all into it. But with enough convincing, he came, and it was a great decision. It turned out to be a booming neighborhood, still growing, and I don't see the neighborhood without the rabbi. I feel like he is at the helm. He's really directing and steering the ship, and he's very involved in every aspect. I think rabbis today, Michael, are a little different than what it used to be from when I remember growing up, and especially 50 years ago. They're much more saturated in what's going on in the shul. They're much more they're not just there to answer shilas, to answer, halachic questions. They're there to be involved in your personal life, to get advice, business advice even. And they have a much bigger role than they ever did. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that, and that's part of the challenge, because as a shul grows, or as a community grows, the relationship that one might have with the first 20, 30, 40 congregants is totally different, potentially totally different, because then you get stretched out.
Right.
And, in my circumstance, since I'm wearing other hats, it's the rabbinics is voluntary. I'm not doing that for parnasa purposes. So therefore, I'm wearing bunch of other hats. So it has its challenge. And
What do you mean you're not doing this for parental purposes?
I'm not
you
sure.
mentioned that very casually, so it's not a job for you financially, so you have other things going on financially?
Yes, I have other things going on financially. I've never, I financially support the shul, not vice versa.
You're kidding me. So you don't take a salary from the shul, and you support the shul?
Yes.
What does that mean? Why the people in the shul aren't contributing? Like, why is it set up that way?
The people in the shul definitely contribute, but predominantly, again, I have to be very careful. Predominantly, I bought the initial building, and I'm probably one of the largest donors to the shul.
Okay, this is very interesting. So you're a whole different model than most relationships between
Yes,
a rabbi
and
and a
Baruch
congregation.
Hashem.
So let's talk about those. So what
By
else?
the way, I'm sorry, unless it's a Rebbe-run shul. So this is more like a Rebbe-run.
No, but the
No,
Rebbe,
no,
the Rebbe
no.
doesn't
No?
fund the shul.
The Rebbe doesn't.
The Rebbe is the
not
executive
responsible?
decision maker as the Rebbe.
I mean, the one advantage I have, and
Yeah.
to be honest, one of the advantages is I'm able to speak my mind. There's no, I'm not, I'm beholden to many people in the shul because they're great to me and they really do great things to the community. And there are many people that are benevolent to the shul, but I'm not beholden to the shul because I take a salary, there's a vote on my salary, and any of that sort. It's in the end, and I think it works well both ways. In the end, they know I'm here because I care
You
about
want
them.
to be there.
I want to be
Yeah,
there.
it's authentic.
And at the same time, but I want to be very clear. It takes a village to raise a kid. That's, I think, the expression. It takes an entire community to create a community. And it is not just rabbi-oriented. It is so many people that are putting in efforts and being able to make chesed work, being able to make shul work. It requires so much more than just a question of a paid employee.
So if you don't mind me asking, so where is this money coming from? Do you have a side job? Like, how are you funding all of this?
Well, that's the Kof-K.
Okay.
I think.
let's talk about
What are
that,
your
yeah.
hats, Rabbi? Like, you tell us real quick. What are your hats that you're wearing?
What are the hats that I wear
Yeah,
presently?
please.
I'm my kids' parents. Is that the first one? Most
That's a good
important?
one, though. I like that.
That's
pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reality. I'm the executive director, whichever terminology you want to use, of the Kof-K, which is the primary source of income. I also have certain responsibility within Yeshiva Sar Ruvain, and I am the Rav of Kilas Yisharim of Wesley Hill. So those are the predominant three hats, and then obviously they're in life. Things wind up on. If you're looking and open to helping people, things wind up on your lap. So, but those are my primary three. The income, my financial income. The truth is, my parents, my mother and my father have given me everything that I have financially. And that's the reality. And Baruch Hashem, they've allowed and facilitated for each of their children. My brother's a Rosh Yeshiva. My brother in Teaneck had started his own shul. All of our dreams have financially been facilitated by my parents. Our spouses are all helpful and supportive. But on the financial level, the reason why we don't need to be able to, the chesed that we're able to do is not necessarily financially based, is simply because of the benevolence of our parents.
What a blessing. That's so
Yes,
beautiful.
Baruch Hashem.
And where did your parents come into having these kind of funds to support their children at this capacity? How did they begin?
Okay. A partnership. To be honest with you, in terms of the funds, my mother invested it. My mother did all the finances in the family. Everything from A to Z. My father was a professor of mathematics. He got a very nice buyout from Fairleigh Dickinson University. My mother did all the investment of it. My father ran the Kof-K. My mother, the joke is my mother had a plaque, has a plaque on her desk that says, my father says president, my mother says vice president in charge of the president.
Yeah.
So the reality is they were an absolute partnership. And the Kof-K was obviously initially my father's brainchild, but everything he did was an absolute partnership.
So your father started the organization of
My
Kof-K.
father started the organization, yes.
So what is Kof-K? Can you walk us through that? Like how did this organization start and what does it do?
How did the organization start?
Yeah.
Okay. My father had a PhD in mathematics. He was a Rav of a Shul in North Bergen, New Jersey. And back then, many people were reading labels to be able to try to figure out things. Kosher was not as regulated, not as formal as it exists presently. So at that point in time, there was Howard Johnson's along the highways. They had all the Howard Johnsons that were along the highways. And a number of his congregants asked him, can we eat in the Howard Johnson's on the highway.
What is Howard Johnson?
That's
Do you know what
exactly.
it is?
Do you don't
The
remember?
hotels you talking about? The breakfast?
Wow, this is to tell you how things are going. Howard Johnson's used to be an ice cream parlor connected to the hotel. It was Howard Johnson's Ice Creams was the old, and it was by all the restaurants.
If you're a listener that knew that, I want to know about that. That you knew that. That's our demographic.
Was
How
it a
old are our
national
listeners?
company?
It was a national
Wow.
organization, and it was along all the rest stops. And,
Oh.
and then people would stop and get an ice cream and think Howard Johnson's Ice Cream. You can look it up.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
basically, at that point in time, my father, his background behind it was my father was involved in the yeshiva student organization of yeshiva in YU, which was put out at that point in time, as opposed to there being formal hashgachas, they would put out recommended items in which they would call up the companies, get some affidavits and information. It was not as regulated and as formal as we have presently.
It wasn't readily available. You had to go actively search this information.
And a lot of the companies didn't have hashgachas. So they, in the end, you had to do it very much closer to what exists in Europe.
I was going to say in
presently.
Europe they have that.
Europe.
Today.
So my father was involved in this
Antiquated.
student organization of yeshiva, and he got some involvement in the kashrus end of that, researching ingredients. My father, as I told you, was a mathematician by trade. He was a scientist. That was the way he was, very exacting. And so when he, in the rabbinate, he was then asked to see if we could find out about this Howard Johnson's. So my father walked into the, kept on calling them, and eventually they created a meeting, and they met with my father, and they said, okay, you know what, Rabbi, we'll let you come in to look at, there was a Howard Johnson, the manufacturing facility was in Englewood, New Jersey. They said, you'll come into Englewood, New Jersey, you look at it, and this way you can tell your congregants as to that this item was kosher. So fine, my father comes, he comes to the meeting, and he meets with them, and then they say to him, Rabbi, we would like a letter on your letterhead saying that the food is kosher. My father goes, what do you want it for? He goes, I'm here for my congregants. They go, Rabbi, do you think we're going to have 50 rabbis go through our plant, and each one, we would like one rabbi to go through the plant and tell us that they can tell to the other rabbis that it's certified kosher. My father thinks about it. He goes, okay, I'll do that. I guess I can do it, and I'll go through. I'll take care of the thing. So then there was another meeting. Again, this was over a course of weeks. They call him back for another meeting. They said, okay, we're going to meet. You're going to do this. You're going to set up. Then they look at him, and they say, well, Rabbi, so we have the plant in Englewood, New Jersey. We have one in Baltimore, Maryland, and we have one in Texas. My father goes, wait 1 second. I'm just interested in Englewood, New Jersey. I'm a local rabbi. I go, I have no interest in Maryland. And I go, once again, Rabbi, if you really think we're going to have rabbis going to all these places, we want you to do it. So, okay, my father, fine. So the meeting continues, and they look at my father, and they say, okay, so this is what we want. We want a written proposal for the entire cost of this certification on your company's letterhead. Can you have that into us, within a couple of days? My father's thinking for a second, letterhead company? My father has none of these things. So then they look at him, and they look at my father, and they say, they saw my father was hesitant. They said, you do have a company, don't you? Because again, he dealt with so many different people, different conversations. Each person was different. He kept on moving up on the company. Father thinks, he goes, sure, I have a company. I go, oh, what's the name? Kosher Supervision Service, KSS. That was what it was initially, Kosher Supervision Service. They said, okay, fine. So get us a proposal on your letterhead by the first thing in the beginning of the week. My father leaves the office. My grandfather had a printing company. I believe my grandfather had passed already. So he went to my grandfather's partner, Stabby. He drove immediately to there. They went ahead. He says they printed, he made up letterhead, sent it out, and that's basically the way it started.
Wow. So Howard Johnson put your father, the Kof-K, in business.
Right.
He was the first client.
Oh, in reality, there were other clients afterwards. Once my father decided to do it, before he actually put Howard Johnson, certified Howard Johnson, there were actually two other companies that preceded. I don't remember. I think it was a bread company also in the Englewood area.
So OU wasn't around back then?
OU was.
So why couldn't Howard Johnson just
They
call up
could've.
OU?
It just the the availability was a fraction.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't exist. If you talk to people in the late 60s, kosher certification was it just wasn't as available.
So is Kof-K a competitor to OU? And do you guys do the same function?
So I'll answer your question in the following fashion. And it's a very important question, and I actually would like the opportunity to be able to debunk a misnomer. Basically, Rabbi Genak, who is the head of the OU, has an expression. He says the OU is a little bit off center. That basically center is my father's name. Many of the founders and many of the people who have had significant positions within the OU actually worked for my father at one point in time. Rabbi Genak had worked for my father at one time. Rabbi Belsky, who was the Paisik of the OU, he initially was the Paisik by the Kof-K. The idea of creating a Paisik was something that my father chose. And so Rabbi Belsky, and sometimes people would come work for my father and then realize that there's a larger platform by going to the OU. There was Rabbi Genak, whether it was Rabbi Juravo, there was a Rabbi Bernstein, there was Rabbi Belsky, many of the people who were at the cornerstone positions within the OU. So to say that for years and decades everything was hunky-dory and everything was always very, very smooth between the kashrus organizations, I'd be lying to you. There was, at times, stress and there were challenges.
Politics,
whatever terminology you want. But I've been quoted, and this is a statement that I say proudly. My life's accomplishment is my father went into the Olam B'emes for machlokes with no one. My father had, at the end, there were machlokes in, and I'm not going to tell you that there weren't, but that might fit under none of your business. But my life's accomplishment is he went into the Olam B'emes for machlokes with nobody.
For those listening that don't know what you just said, that he went into the next world without anybody harboring any resentment on him.
Right.
He had no political feuds with anybody at that
There
point.
were challenges over the years because it is a business and it is competitive. But I do believe, and that's what I'm saying, debunk a misnomer. We are a business, but we work very, very, very well together. Rabbi Genak, Rabbi Elephant from the OU are some of my closest friends.
They do actually the same things, right? They're both providing kosher supervision.
Kosher supervision. There are nuances, differences, meaning certain vadim have responsibilities to a specific constituents, which is whether it's the CRC in Chicago is to Chicago, where the Starcade does take a primarily responsibility. They're national organizations, but they have a local constituency,
regional presence
that they are responsible for. So there are some that are national, there are some that are private, and there are some that are local.
Who's the biggest? Is OU? OU is the biggest, right?
OU is hands down the biggest.
And they work with across the globe. They work with companies, Coca-Cola, with Post.
One second. Kof-K works with international companies. It's not a question of we're only doing regional. In other words, Unilever, Pepsi. You use Coke. Pepsi Cola is under the Kof-K. So there are Ben & Jerry's, Unilever. There are very large industrial companies and the largest.
You're giving a certification for Ben & Jerry's?
Yes, we do give a certification of Ben & Jerry's.
Let's talk about that 1 second.
Oh, okay.
I mean, isn't the owner of Ben & Jerry's a blatant anti-Semite?
No.
Do you have that type of...
So let me answer that question.
Please.
Because the important... Ben & Jerry's sold to Unilever. Ben & Jerry's is no longer owned by Ben or Jerry. And Ben & Jerry's sold it and divested it long before that the Ben & Jerry's scandal happened. So it is 100% owned by Unilever.
So he has nothing to even do with the company.
They have an advisory role in a secondary... They maintain a social advocacy, which they always had.
Yeah.
And their social advocacy, and it's a platform that they have.
Wow.
But Unilever...
So you have relationships with some of the more powerful companies, industries in the country.
Yes.
You guys hold a very important, the Jewish market is pretty substantial. Obviously, it's not the biggest market for them, but it's an important market, so much so that they change. I always wondered about this. Coca-Cola will actually have a different recipe or they'll change something just for Passover. Just so they can sell their product to Jewish people, observant Jewish people on Passover, right? Is that right? How does that work? Like, why do they even do that?
But they're only changing. That's the thing. They're changing not across the entire market, meaning they're changing exclusively for their Passover run. they're not changing what they're marketing in North Dakota. And
Right.
Stuff in North
Just
Dakota.
in certain pockets where they have
certain
Jewish
pockets that make a
markets.
specific run for it.
But they do make a change in their product just for that, just for those 8 days, which I always found interesting that they would do such a thing. And my God, you can go 8 days without drinking Coca-Cola. It's okay, but I guess it's worth it for them
I believe that's predominantly a service.
as a courtesy.
The Passover, I believe, is more of a service. I can explain to you the difference why year-round is not necessarily a service as opposed to Passover. Passover is predominantly a service. Year-round is an economic decision.
It is. It makes sense for them. I'm guessing they're making more money than it's costing them for this. So is this a lucrative business that the OU and the Kof-K and all these other are they really monetizing on this? Like they're charging big bucks to do this?
Again, the cost is negligible to the company. And I'll explain to why the company's doing it. Although one of the things growing up, one of these, it was posted on the the Jewish tax and so on and so forth. I remember our address growing up was posted on one of these. Again, I won't even say internet. The internet was in its beginning then, but it was being broadcast all across the country, our home address, because this is one of the people that are part of the kosher tax. There's no kosher tax. The cost that they incur is negligible in terms of that. So again, but going back to why they do it, I think there's a very simple economics. You're the buyer now for ShopRite, right? And you have a choice of buying a potato chip that will sell to 95% of your customers, or will appeal to 100% of your customers. Let's assume for a moment 5%, you're in the New York area, and 5% of those purchases are Jewish, and that want kosher. Which one are you going to give the shelf space to? Are you going to give the shelf space to the 95?
I imagine so.
95?
Yeah.
No, you give it to the 100 if the cost makes sense.
If the cost makes sense,
Yes.
and there's no cost difference.
Yeah, of course you give it to the 100.
You give it to the 100.
Yeah.
So in the end, even if kosher just represents 5%,
But it's worth it for the market.
you're not getting
the numbers.
No, you're getting the shelf space. You're getting the 100%. You're knocking the other guy off the shelf space. I'm
So you're
ShopRite.
saying the company's willing to invest in that certification to get the shelf space.
It's all about shelf space.
That's what it is.
And
the
therefore,
real estate on the
it's
ground.
real estate in the supermarket.
in the supermarket. Yeah.
And that's why you represent. And that's
Interesting. What edge do you have?
what edge you have, and that's
Right.
always and that's where it's gluten free, whether it's organic.
Right.
And in the end, the shelf space is what's dictating it. And if you have that one little edge, that gives you, so you're not getting that 2%, 3%. You're getting the shelf space, which gets you everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's that logic does not bear out on Pesach.
You may not know the answer to this question, but because we're talking about Pesach, bazooka gum, do you have any clue why it disappeared?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's a
Once upon a
personal
time,
question.
no. Once upon a time, it was under my father's hashgacha.
Yeah.
Bazooka. How many
During Pesach.
employees work for the Kof-K organization?
I would say probably about 100.
100. Now, somebody within the organization has traveled to all of these manufacturing plants across the country, wherever they're making this stuff, and they're regularly checking in. They're coming in. Is there a schedule? How does it work? How does that part work?
It varies. Example, in the last 20 years, the greatest growth in terms of import and kosher certification happens to be from the Far East. So I happen to have 5 or 6 employees that are constantly rotating in the Far East, going to different plants in the Far East. So
What's a more popular one? What area?
it's all over.
Yeah.
For me personally, it's China now.
China.
It happens to be we're seeing the effects of
Yeah.
of the tariffs because there are companies popping up elsewhere to be able. Everybody wants to import, and they all need to be importing to our manufacturers. So they're already popping up in other countries, relabeling, and so on and so forth. But do you mind if I go back and I just tell the story about Ben & Jerry's? Do you mind it?
Please, yeah.
Because there's a lot of misinformation, and I think
Half this page is about Ben & Jerry's. Are you kidding me?
So okay, so
Is it really? I didn't even know
I'm
that.
excited for you to talk about Ben & Jerry's.
So okay,
They literally just mentioned the genocide, literally.
Okay,
And if
so-
they have their volume up for people, then I'm curious as to why the Kof-K wouldn't take a stance on it. Perhaps on the other side. I'm so curious.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let-
We would
let-
expect Kof-K to stand. We're stripping them of their certification.
Okay,
We don't want
I'm
any
outta
part
here.
of this
I'm
company. We don't want any part of this company. But again, if it's owned by Unilever,
let me
you're saying it's not even anything to do with this guy.
Let me tell you the story.
I
Yeah.
still have a challenge with it, by the way. So that's why I'd like to hear the story.
So, and you know what? I think there's some lessons that I think would work for both of us through the story. So basically, as we all know, at some point in time, Unilever, not Ben & Jerry's, Unilever, because of pressure from Ben & Jerry's, had given a ultimatum to their company in Israel that they are no longer going to, if you sell to Yehuda Shomron, we are no longer going to allow you to maintain their the marketing. That they were going to stop. They had arranged an agreement at that point in time. It was being manufactured by a company in Israel. They just had licensing rights. It wasn't owned by Ben & Jerry Unilever. They were licensing the name to the company in Israel. They were going to take away that licensing right because of the argument over Yehuda and Shomron. Obviously, that was, and yes, the question did turn, and the lights turned towards us. Should we or should we continue certification? So the first thing is, don't react immediately. Gather your information, find out what you're dealing with, and then make a educated decision or seek out people that will help you make out an educated decision. So first of all, just a misnomer. Most companies are not interested in taking political stands. So want to see if maybe there's a little bit to the rest of the story. So Unilever happens to own 100% of Strauss. So now if they stop Ben & Jerry's, so then they were 50% of the market. 50% of the market was Ben & Jerry's, 50% of the market was Strauss. By pulling it, they were, because I'm going like, how in the world are they walking away from multi-million dollars of sales? They weren't. They were doing something that was in their economic best interest. They were closing down a competitor. They were using politics to be able to close down a competitor. Do you hear?
Very interesting.
Strauss, you look at online, Strauss was 100% owned by Unilever. So first statement is, it's about dollars and cents. People think it's about politics, but it was about dollars and cents. Okay,
Follow the money. That's where it usually ends up.
So then, now, what's our responsibility? So in life, and very often I apologize, podcasters or people that are speaking enjoy pontificating in their position, in which it doesn't necessarily have real life repercussions, or it does. Meaning everybody's more than happy to tell me what to do under those circumstances, but in the end, who was going to be most affected by this decision? So we decided to contact the people by Yehuda and Shomron. So we actually became in contact with Yigal Damoni. Yigal Damoni was the CEO of the Council of Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria. And we said, okay, Yigal, tell us what you want us to do, not what the talking heads want to do. What do you think is in your best interest? So Yigal said he wants to think about it. And at the same time, in life, my family, a lot of our personal questions are directed to Rabbi Mordechai Willig. So at one point in time, we were balancing it, speaking to Rabbi Willig as to what on a religious perspective, and at the same time getting the direction. So if you remember the history of it, they announced that they were going to stop, take away the licensing 18 months in advance. They didn't announce it immediately. They announced in 18 months from now, we're going to take it away from them because of this whole fight of Yehuda and Shomron. So his response was, stay the course, stay with them to try to influence them to change. He put us in contact with a Professor Kantorovitz, I believe his name was. He was the one who actually authored the law on BDS. He helped us get in there during COVID. We went in, we met with them. He brought us to a whole bunch of different councils. We met with Matan Kahana. And he brought us within the government of the movers and shakers within the government of Eretz Yisrael. And they said, stay the course, maintain your influence. And tell them that, okay, if it comes to fruition, then we will be put into a difficult position. But don't draw the line in the sand when the line isn't there yet. The line in the sand is 18 months out.
Yeah.
So we maintained conversations, we maintained contacts, and we kept on trying to influence it. In the end, the owner, and we were in contact with the owner of Ben & Jerry's. If you know the end of the story, Ben & Jerry's sold the entire name to the Israeli company. So the Israeli company no longer was just a licensee of it. It actually owns the name Ben & Jerry's in Israel. It totally divested itself, no longer connected to the Unilever part. And in the end, they were very, very happy, and they're continuing to sell to Yehud and Shomron all across Eretz Yisrael. And I think the lesson is very often we like to react and we like to jump. And, and sometimes when we feel that we're attacked, and we as Yidden were attacked in that circumstance. But the right thing to do is to seek out the people, to seek out. This Yigal Damoni is a very, very close friend of mine now. And there are many different other projects that I'm involved with him now, because in reality, when you think it through and you find proper people to give you advice, and that's the truth in life. This is not a business lesson.
Yeah.
So now, in the end, is it nice that this separate and Unilever fully basically then got sued by Ben & Jerry's because Unilever supported Ben & Jerry's Israel? The Ben & Jerry's social group, which is not Unilever, sued Ben & Jerry's in court to try to overturn it because in the end, it totally favored Israel. They lost. Unilever won in court. So our involvement, I'd like to believe our involvement somehow in some form or fashion helped them. And we dealt with the highest level of people to be madrich us, to guide us as to what is the most efficient and effective way. And they kept on saying, Airbnb tried this also. I don't know if you knew that. Airbnb also tried cutting out all of Yehuda Shomron, and they fought against it. BDS, and we know what's going on in the college campuses. It's going to show its head again. And in reality, we have to be prudent and not necessarily be reactionary. We should be proactive, but at the same time, follow the people who've got the most skin in the game.
Yeah.
That's
wow, that's crazy. I didn't realize, Michael, now that I'm like being exposed to it, this Heckscher business, it's wild. It's
a real business.
Like someone's got to write a book about this.
Yeah.
I have so many questions now. Like you've opened my mind to so many things. There has been some sort of stigma, okay, and there's probably very little truth to it, but there's got to be some truth to it, that the kashrus business has become somewhat of a mafia. And I'm just repeating what's been said out there. And you could see why. I mean, it kind of makes sense, is that you're a store and you're a restaurant, and you're not going to get any business if you don't have proper supervision with certification from a reputable company like an OU, like a Kof-K. And that gives them a lot of power. That gives them the ability to squeeze people. You'll pay a price that I demand because the supply is very limited. It's not like you can go to any just local makeup type of kashrus because no one's gonna believe it. No one's gonna buy into it. So you want to have the credible people, right? You want and so you're gonna have to pay whatever it is that they charge you. So that puts it in an uncomfortable position, when you're paying for something that you have very little control over. And there's something to be talked about as far as how fair is it when you're dealing with something that's related to Judaism. It's related to, something that we're all dependent on. It's very necessary. It's almost like it should be regulated in a way. It should be something that, we should talk about and make sure that there's a system in place that everybody's benefiting from, not some more than others. And turns out that this thing became a very, very, very big business. And rightly, a lot of work goes into it. I believe and we've said this many times in the podcast, we're big capitalists. We believe that the only way things work effectively is if somebody's turning a profit. Otherwise, what's the motivation? And then you get second-class type of work. You really want to get the best, you got to pay for it. So totally makes sense. But there has been a side to this business, let's call it, that there's a little bit of darkness to it. There's a little bit of dark clout on it that if you can shed some light, your perspective on all of that.
So I'm going to tell you an answer that is going to be very unpopular. I believe in monopolies. Was that a bad answer?
Love it.
You're not off to a good start.
Not off to a good start. Let me explain. Obviously, a little shock value, but I want to explain. My father and our organization afterwards has very limited restaurants, and we try to avoid it like the plague. And I'll explain to you why. The reality is the highest risk kosher is your restaurants. And unfortunately, they're working on certain margins that makes, at times, finding the mashgiach, a qualified mashgiach, difficult. And yes, even though, yes, I'm a card-carrying Republican, and I do believe in competition and so on and so forth, but you don't want competition to run to the least common denominator of kosher. I believe kosher really does remain in the domain of the local rabbis. That's why the Kof-K did not go into the different areas, because I do believe they should have the right to be able to, they bear the responsibility of the community. As we started off this conversation, I'm a rabbi also. So to me, they bear the responsibility of so many other religious aspects of the community that if there winds up being a competition, and then in the end the person goes, my rabbi didn't make me do that, my rabbi didn't make me do that, well, that undermines them. So to me, I do believe in that the local rabbinate should be given the capability of establishing standards within the community. And going back to the finances of it, the largest cost for them is the mashkiach. And sadly, many of these people are living below the poverty level. And the worst thing in my mind is a competition on, okay, well, you told me I only have to pay him $20 an hour. You're telling him I have to pay him $35 an hour. Well, I'm not going to you. So many of these mashkichim, unfortunately, are not living not receiving a living wage. And to me, the opening it up to the public at large and opening it up to everybody has its risks. I understand in a theory in a capitalistic environment, but unfortunately, it's now back to the consumers. What do I mean? When a scandal happens, wherever it is and all over, every time the chicken winds up here or whatever problem, then everybody's more than happy to point the fingers at the rabbi.
How could you let this happen?
But when the rabbi turns around and goes, hold on one second, you know what? I'm going to say it proudly, because I give credit to the store in Upper West Side. Upper West Side called me up and wanted to be able to have certification for a market there. I said, I'm not interested. I have no interest. I got a call from the Rosh Koil. The community wanted me. We're not interested. I'm only doing it if you pay the mashkiach $100,000. Now, recognize that most of us can't make ends meet on that.
Right.
But that's far more than what the average mashkiach is getting.
How'd the story end?
They gave it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they gave it to him. And I would not have anything to do with it unless that was the case.
Kol hakavod. Wow.
But Michael, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
As if you go into a free market,
It's okay. You're not predominantly in the restaurant business.
That's exactly correct.
That's okay.
You don't want to make it a
that
price
reason.
war to the bottom. That's what you don't want to do. A race to
and
the
it
bottom.
has.
By
And
the way,
we're slowly. I have to tell you, it's something my brother and I have worked on. It's 3 years ago, mashkichim were routinely being paid $20 an hour. Now, Baruch Hashem, they're in the $30 to $35 an hour, but that's still not a living wage. So, to me, on some level, it's an interesting balance. When things go wrong, everybody's more than happy to point the finger. But if they get together, and if the kashrus agents get together and want to actually enforce, and I think the most important thing to enforce is to be able to lift up the level of the pay to the mashkichim, which is going to all sound like a mafia.
Right.
But that's why, unfortunately, I told you, I believe.
I heard yes.
I walk away and I believe the local rabbis should be able to do that in order to.
But they do. The local rabbis can create their own little thing for like the local stores, and
But
they'll
like
put
in
their
Muncie,
name
we
on
don't
it.
have it. And it's in Bergen County, it exists.
It exists.
There is one RCBC, Rabbinical Council of Bergen County. So they're able to somewhat affect my brother actually, we were asked about 3 or 4 years ago to come into, I grew up in Teaneck. So we were asked by the rabbis in Teaneck to go into Teaneck to help them reset. And part of the reset was asking some of the other certifying agencies to leave so that we can raise the mashkichim that were being paid $20 to being paid over $30 an hour. You were able to affect the quality of the mashkichim, and then we left. Wow. Then afterwards we decided that let it put back into the hands of the local rabbis.
How many companies do you certify? Range
1,500.
Wow. And some of these companies out of the 1,500 are huge companies,
Yes,
right?
10%, not even.
10% are big companies?
700, I'm going to tell you, estimate 700 companies are coming from the Far East, which are chemical companies.
The manufacturers.
Manufacturers.
I just wanted to clarify it for a second. So you're not in the restaurant world, right? You're not in alcohol world either. And just tell us real quick, what world are you living in? The manufacturer space and
we have a very large piece in the manufacturing space.
Okay.
We do again. Yes, and it was like I gave an example. It's Pepsi, Cola, Unilever. Those are the large. Okay,
large manufacturers or also distributors. Yeah.
But I feel like OU is much more visible.
Yes,
they have a lot more market share. I feel like Lay's potato chips, right? Like all the big companies. The OU is the most known thing.
The OU is most definitely the most known.
They have a big brand, the OU.
Yes.
How many, who runs the OU? Is there a group of people, or is there one or two executives at OU? Who runs it? Because that's a big business.
Right. So Rabbi Ganak, who I spoke to, initially worked for my father, and then there's a Rabbi Elephant. Those are the two people who are in charge. There is above it. There's a kashrus commission. It is part of a large organization. OU is part of a larger non-for-profit organization.
So they're doing restaurants also.
They do much. They don't do as many restaurants either.
Ah, I see. But they do also manufacturing.
Again, they're more product based. They do
They do some restaurants.
How did you guys get Pepsi? I'm very curious. That's a big account. What was that like?
Because you want to be honest.
Yeah.
I understand. I think the OU gave it to us because they weren't able to do Kof-K.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Why would OU give it to you?
They couldn't
Monopoly.
They couldn't do. Coke would not allow them.
Coke didn't want them to have.
No, Coke did not allow them to.
They didn't want them to be serving their competitors.
I believe so. Again, that was prior to me.
It's an interesting idea. Whether it's
is Kof-K the second biggest kashrus company?
It depends on who you ask.
But it's up there. It's up there. Top 3 or 4.
Within the United States, the other two are going to be either ourselves or the OK.
Oh, the OK. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So who's the OK? Who are those? Is there a level of kashrus as far as stringency? Is OU the best and Kof-K is the best? Or they're all the same? It's the same. I'm asking the wrong person.
No. He looked at the sign. He's saying it's none of your business.
Oh, okay. None of my business, huh?
Honestly, I'm actually curious for the listeners, and I am curious myself. If I go to a product and I buy it, can you just list me who are the ones that I need to trust as a symbol? What are the top?
Yeah,
5?
what are some of the big ones? It's a great question.
No, so again, it's interesting. I invoke my father a lot during these conversations. Yeah. My father has, for 30 years, and as I told you, my father went into the next world, an argument with nobody.
Yeah.
His strict policy was do not comment on other people's certification.
Okay.
He says it was very simple. You know what? In the end, if you say negative, everybody's...
Stefan, please research top 10 kosher certifications. I'd like to see it on the wall.
The Hasidim have their own little thing going on.
Correct.
Right?
Hasidim have their own thing. It's a whole...
They don't participate in the OU and the Kof-K and any of this. They do their own thing.
That's a misnomer. That's a very, very, very big misnomer.
Well, there's a lot of those coming out today.
Yeah.
Let me explain. Honestly, there's no... it's the flavor companies. You asked where's a lot of what we have. So there's trickle-down economics. What do I mean by that? The moment the manufacturer needs certification, then the ice cream company is going to need certification on its cream. It's going to need certification on its sugar. It's going to need certification on...
each of the ingredients.
Not really, but primarily it's flavors and so on and so forth.
Sure.
So all the people supplying to these companies now look for certification. So the vast majority of certification is not necessarily on that item on the market, but these 700 companies that I told you that are in China, we don't do any of the consumer-based product coming out of China. We're not doing any of those candies, any of those things. We're not involved in that at all. But we're involved in 700 companies that are supplying to other companies within the United States. So a lot of the certification is trickle down. That's not coming from a Hasidic company. Many of those Hamish Ashkachas are contacting us.
They're relying on you as the parent company to manage some of those ingredient-based companies.
The majority of their ingredients
very
are coming
interesting.
from companies under our certification.
What do you do when you find out someone's cheating the system? Do you have ways how to audit people? What are some tricks that you go in that you do? Are you allowed to show up to any of the manufacturing plants without permission? You have the right. You have the keys to the building.
No, you do not have the keys to the building.
So you have to be by invite only.
It's not by invite only. It's basically by contract. They have to allow us in when we show up. Now there are various levels based on the intricacy of the product. Some, there are flavor companies that I have rabbis that are in there all the time. They have offices in the building. There are other places.
They're stationed there.
They're stationed there. There are other places that the person might be there once a week. There are other. It varies, or once a month. It varies on the intricacy of the product. Okay.
So, by the way, the rabbi, the Stefan, you just looked it up. Oshi, we could talk about it. the Kof-K is in the top 3.
Top 3?
Top 3. And
so what do you have? You have the...
We have OU and we have...
The CRC.
No, the CRC is lower than the top 3.
Well, it's up there on the board.
He's just going to
What are you
scroll
looking
up.
on the
We
board?
have, just scroll up. We have the Star K, we have the Kof-K, the OU, and the OK in the top 4. Yeah.
Okay. Where are you reading this from, Steve?
Rabbi, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Okay, remember that? Wow.
Yeah.
Earth Kosher. Never heard of that.
MK.
That's Montreal.
Badats.
Badats,
You heard of
Haredis.
the
But that's
Badats?
probably
RCC,
Right,
just
RCC.
California. No, I have a question on my mind that I have to ask it. Whether it's part of the. Someone just told me the story about the Muncie fiasco of the chickens, and I'm so curious.
You never knew that story till
No,
recently?
how it came out.
Oh, how they were caught.
Yes.
I don't even know that.
I just heard it.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm going to tell you the story I heard. It's a cool story.
Okay.
You don't have to talk about your other things. I respect you and your
Okay.
the thing. It's just an interesting story. A distributor said, well, the guy was ordering tongue from me, and I went to an event and I saw that there was tons of tongue at this event, and I'm like, I told all the distributors that I'm out of tongue. How did he get tongue? I'm the only guy in the industry with tongue right now. And then he did a little research and he found that it wasn't just the tongue, it was the chicken and everything else. But it's interesting because having the right mashgichim in place and having the right staff that actually don't just sit on the corner and take home lunch bags and, because they need to, because they're only getting paid like minimum poverty wage, like you said. I love that. I love that concept. And I'm curious about how you guys decided what risks are in the industry, what aren't. And you're saying manufacturing is a big one, but you said 10% is national products as well, right? Like,
So I'll explain to you. When you say risk, you take any one of the large manufacturers. They're much less risk than the smaller manufacturers.
Right.
They have development teams. As long as, I'll take it in the following fashion. It's very hard to be a policeman. It's much easier to be part of the facilitator. What do I mean by that? If you, in a large company, come involved with the purchasing company, with the development, so there's much less surprises. Your average, your small company might go and buy from a distributor and can't really even control who the product they get. Your average restaurant is buying from a distributor. The distributor chooses what he provides them. When you're dealing with a company that's $100 million worth of sales, it's a huge company. They're purchasing from the same people. They have the quality control. It's a much
Consistency.
easier. The consistency. It's a much easier environment.
Right.
So the smaller you get, the smaller companies, and that's the smaller companies and the more
They're more
retail-
volatile, the
more
smaller
volatile
companies, because there's no real rhyme or reason for what they're getting that week, So
and they very much could be by price oriented, and it was at that point
whatever's cheaper for the day. There's like
it's
like a shopping tool,
They might go to a
Michael.
Restaurant Depot
Yeah.
and just fill up their cart and be able to do it. It's a totally different.
So one of the good things that I learned from this already is that the idea of having a community-based kosher, I like that idea. In the Muncie community, I came to Shul the other day, and that's what I wanted to ask you real quick. Sorry, I know you still have something on your mind. We'll get to it, right? You remembering it?
Sure.
Okay, good. The rabbis got together of the community and they created a certification on top of all the certifications of all the restaurants in the community from all the other certifications nationally recognized in the community. I was so lost by it. I didn't understand it. I didn't get a good explanation. Can you just give me it would make sense for me if the community got together and said, the rabbis, hey, let's get rid of all the national organizations. Let's make a community-based organization for kashrus like California or whatever, or Maryland, and do something. But this is like, oh, no. The OU and all the other restaurants that are certified by nationally recognized, that's not good enough for you. We're going to make another layer. I'm just curious how that happened.
So I don't
Do you know what I'm
think-
talking about, Oshri?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm also curious how that happened as well.
Yes, that was my question.
Why did they
Sorry.
feel like they had to add
what's going on here?
more resources to and also made people question like, what's going on? Was there something
Exactly.
wrong?
Okay, so can I?
They put a lot of by the way, that's what I meant by the power. These
Yes.
bigger organizations
Yes, what's going on here?
can say, by the way, that rabbinical organization
Right, it's not good.
They're no good. We don't
Right.
approve of
Have a
it,
nice
and then
day.
they put them out of business.
Sorry, Rabbi. Well, I'll let you answer. Go ahead.
Okay. So I would like to explain it in the following fashion. You started off with the story beforehand about the challenge with the chicken.
Yeah.
as I explained to you, very often, the kosher certification, you're going to have a proprietor, and the proprietor, I'm a firm person. I don't want to have to pay a mashgiach, and you understand where the proprietor is coming from. You know, very often, and within our community, what do you mean? I'm frum. I know and you don't trust me. So there's always a friction as to the more certification you want to establish versus the cost that's going to be incurred by the proprietor. It's a very, very difficult environment.
Okay.
And that's why I'm going to say it out loud. There's standards that exist within our community in Muncie that are below the standards that may exist in Bergen County. In other words, both of your shuls, very often they're sending equipment without a mashgiach, correct? They'll send you a hot box, and that hot box, they'll bring the food with the hot box, they'll drop it off, and then they'll afterwards come back and take it back. They'll send a chol pot. None of that exists in Bergen County. Why? Because the rules are the shuls have to have a mashgiach. For you to be able to bring anything that has a caterer's equipment in, the shuls have to have a mashgiach. So the reality is unfortunately, and I'm saying it out loud, the standards of kashrus within our community is not as high as some other communities. And part of that is a pushback of pressure because of economics. You know what? Nobody wants to have to pay for the mashgiach at their now I'm going to sound terrible. Yes, people in my shul, they might go ahead and might spend $25,000-$30,000 on a bar mitzvah or a kiddush or a Shabbos. I don't want to pay the $500 for the mashgiach or the $1,000 for the mashgiach. They should. And the reality is our community as a whole could use an increase in standards as opposed to this perception we have it with party planners. There are party planners that basically run entire events and there's no hashgacha on it at all. So I believe part of what that organization was, and I fully support it, is it was initially the brainchild of a Rabbi Alfred Cohn. He then
From Blueberry Hills?
From Blueberry Hill. He spoke and he looked and asked for advice. I think Rabbi Jervo was involved, Rabbi Kreitman was involved. There were a lot of people who have tremendous kashrus experience. And the point was that we understand that they're not looking to put the certifying agencies out of business, but most of the certifying agencies embraced it. Because then they said, listen, what are you blaming me for? And they're asking for this standardized standard across all of Muncie, so it allows that the present certifying agency to be able to enforce certain things without having to be concerned that, oh, well, hold it, if I don't do it, it's going to go to another certification. By doing this, it is something I personally fully support it. Why my name was not on it, which is a good question, is I didn't want it to have any political overtones. Why is he involved? What? And this, I
it would be a little conflicting.
Conflict,
yeah.
But I believe it is something that is a very good thing.
I don't agree. Because if they would have spoken about events and party planning, it would have meant something. It said, tell your restaurant to be part of our maybe mafia. Otherwise, you shouldn't eat there. Not tell your bar mitzvah makers.
I am to agree with you that there probably was a bigger fish to fry. I agree with you.
All right. So
I'll agree that
It didn't have a very good look at the beginning. The optics weren't great. It looked like a money grab to some people.
No, but I can tell you there was no. And I think you're both pointing on to something which this side of the microphone has to do a better job, or maybe for yours. I believe there are many things that we as rabbis, we as yeshivas, we as kashrus agencies are really trying to do the best we can. There isn't some sort of lack of trust, and I think perhaps lack of dialogue. Meaning, every time yeshiva comes out with something, automatically we assume the yeshiva is doing it. There's a certain sarcasm, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad because the community that I grew up in, my mother was in charge of the PTA, and there was a much more communal-based schools, communal-based shuls, and I think PR are 100%, because not based on any knowledge. Right. I'm going to flip it to you. Yeah. you had a negative adverse reaction, not because you had any information,
Right.
but you made an assumption.
Right.
And I think that's the problem we as rabbis and as mechanchim, because very often, I'm going to give you an example. And I believe in this, and this may be very, very, very unpopular. I wish the schools would go to 11-month schooling.
To what?
To 11-month school. I'll explain. In my personal opinion, there's a huge economic problem. Camps, schools, and things like that. If I told you that the yeshivas came to you and said, you know what, we're going to 10.5 months, for 4 weeks, they're going to be just limud kodesh, and we're going to run a day camp in the afternoon. Because there's no question, I'm not naive. The kids are emotionally happier. They're more cooperative during the summer. But the moment, because I do believe I want it, immediately would there be negative reaction by most of the parent body if the schools came out with saying, we want 10.5? The answer is yes. But unfortunately, I think there has to be more dialogue, and our schools at times are not good at bringing parents in. But I believe that...
So the problem I think that exists for a long time, and this has always been sort of the two sides of the coin between, the rabbinical crowd and then the followers, the people that are listening. I don't know what the relationship we call them, employer and employee, like what do we call it? But bottom line is that a lot of the things became commercialized. A lot of things became about, like, for example, matzah bakeries. Right? Matzah bakeries, it's been known forever that if you owned a matzah bakery, you were probably very wealthy. You're probably well-to-do. I don't know if that's still the case. It certainly was for a very long time, that it was a lucrative business to be in. They were printing money at a certain point. I mean, they start operating a matzah bakery, I heard, like 6 months in advance or whatever it is, long time. And they're working year-round, and they're making lots of money. And then you go to the grocery and you pick up a pound of matzah and you're paying like $40, $50, whatever it costs these days. It's a lot of money. And people don't just wait a second, slow down a second. Who's actually taking advantage of this situation? We all need matzah, bottom line. And we understand that somebody else has to make it and somebody else to charge a fee for it, and we get it. But at what point do we all step in and say we got to draw a line in the sand here? You can't just charge whatever you want because we're forced to buy matzah because of our religion, and now some other people monopolize it, got a hold of, and they now control that segment, and we all have to conform to it. We're going to rebel. We're going to eventually and if this happens one too many times, when things like this in our community comes up and they decide that they need additional kashrus to what we already have kashrus, we need to do more. Why? What's going on? This is more. It might be a little bit of a natural reflex for certain people because we have a history, unfortunately, of doing these kinds of things. So you're right. I think the rabbis need to do a better job of explaining things and not just forcing something down and saying this is what it is. But it's been going on for a while. It's unfortunate, but that's why we're sort of questioning it and we're trying to just get to the bottom. We're getting scammed. What's happening here? Are we being taken advantage of?
So I want to address both of yours because then... so first of all... Okay, so I want to go... I want to...
It's all yours.
So first of all, in that case, in that organization there's no cost involved. They are not charging. It's no cost involved. They fundraise.
Whoa, that's a big.
Yeah, you
put that in bold.
You failed to mention that
No,
part.
they didn't.
Most definitely.
No,
There's
they didn't.
no. If you read through all of its pamphlets,
It said clearly that this is not.
they are
costing
not
anybody additional
charging.
money.
They are not charging a nickel.
The restaurant is a community.
Not a nickel.
It's a beautiful
It's
thing.
amazing.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's
Thank
Suddenly,
you.
okay,
Thank you.
they are not
We
charging.
really
Appreciate the
care.
safety net.
They're
Sure.
in it for the right
And you
reasons.
should talk about the catering and the event
Okay.
planning because that
So
makes
but
sense.
Now any store that didn't join this thing,
No, wait. So, but
any
now,
store that this should be shut down.
No, but
because
I want to
they're
go back.
hiding
What's it?
something.
What's it? No. Okay, you know what? People sometimes are averse to change.
Yeah.
But the reality is they are not charging.
their books.
There is no charge. Now, to go back to the other part, and I apologize if I'm throwing it back on people. You know, we all hear about the prices and so on. So I'm telling you, first of all, it's inconsequential. But you know what? The responsibility in the end is we have to balance our budgets. And that means if it means an extra stop to bingo, or if it means an extra stop to Costco, it's something that we have to realize in the end. Very often we sit in a chair and we blame the schools, we blame the shuls, we blame the rabbis, we blame the system, we blame this. In the end, push comes to shove, it's our responsibility. And it is an imperfect system. You know, to me, I remember this, it was an amazing learning lesson for me. Rabbi Shai Cohn had come to my community. Do you know who Rabbi Shai Cohen is?
Sure, priority one.
Priority one.
Yeah.
So he was speaking. It was Friday night, and he was speaking, and he
Let's
was
just tell everyone who Rabbi Shai Cohen is, especially for Ushi. I don't know your
Rabbi
background,
Shai.
you know of
Okay,
him, but
you
he
know.
was,
Okay.
I know he was a leader for teenage boys. He had a lot of programs, and his priority was helping them grow through that age group.
And he
Many
dealt
different
with
facets.
all aspects of teenage issues. A man, a heart as big as he accepted everybody. So we had a nice, beautiful Friday night, and he's speaking, and he was talking about the challenges that exist in the schools, in the shuls, in the communities, and he was taught. And I saw how it hit a nerve, and a number of the people in my communities kept on growing on the statements, and it was rejuvenating. But I saw in my mind it was going the wrong way. So I remember, because everyone liked to hear all the negativity. So I raised my hand. I said, Rosh Shiva. That's how I referred to Rabbi Shai Cohen. I said, you know what? Very few people are in your position to actually make a difference. But what do we, the average guy like the guy sitting on this side, what do we do in this imperfect situation? Because he understood I was trying to reset the question. So he looked at the crowd that was there. He said, I want to tell you something. He said, the average principal or Rosh Hashiva, we're going to make it up. He has 200 people on a year that he's responsible for. And each year it changes. So the course of his career, he has thousands of people that went through his door. The average teacher has 25 to 30 kids in their class. And over a 30-year career, he'll have 1,000. And each year it changes. He says, in truth, we can talk about the responsibility of Rosh Hashiva. We can talk about the responsibility of the teacher. He said, however, the average parent sitting in this room has somewhere between 4, 6, 7 kids. And they're the same kids year after year. He goes, the primary responsibility sits on you. And even if it's an imperfect situation, we have to stop walking around and throwing and casting the responsibilities to the rabbis, to the teachers. It sits squarely on our shoulders. Now, of course, I don't want to, as the rabbi side, abdicate. We have to wake up every morning and try to figure out how to make it better. But in the end, the solutions are going to come from the people. It's when the people, as you said, if you want to quote Rebel, if in the end you feel prices are too high somewhere, shop elsewhere. It's your responsibility. It is us as individuals to responsibility. In the end, it's our. And you know what? I'll get onto my soapbox. If we think the weddings are too expensive, then change them, and be the person who says, "No, I'm not spending this amount of money. I'm not spending this ridiculous amount of money to rent a dress. I'm not doing." It's be proud. If somebody can really, if we can put the people on a pedestal that actually pay their credit card at the end of the month, and put the people on the pedestal who really go ahead and do what's economically right, we would be able to change our community. It's as opposed to everything being about the perception.
One family at a time. Everybody take responsibility for your 100 feet that's around you. And
we just had
we literally just had
Michael Gilbert,
that was
and
it?
we spoke
Okay.
about this, and I recommend everybody to spread the message within your community. I believe that if someone doesn't have a financial manager, 10 out of 10 people need it.
Yeah.
And it's helpful from a very young age. So someone who can help you manage your budget and your spending, because this is not something that comes easy, Rabbi.
I know, but this
Okay,
really.
I apologize on my soapbox, and I'll do it anyway.
No, I love it.
The reality is how many of us, and I'm calling us because you're all my friends,
I appreciate
are
it.
going and spending $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a Pesach. And to be honest with you, I don't believe it's economically acceptable. If you don't have 2, 3, 4 years worth of assets, can you in an economic way explain why a person can spend $30,000, $40,000 if he doesn't have $500,000 worth of savings? Because you know what? Market turns, guy loses a job. The reality is we spend, even if you're making ends meet, you have to reach a certain point in time and go, hold on one second. My predominant job right now is not to take my kids away for Pesach, but rather to put money away for their college, put money away for their how old is your oldest?
In his 20s.
In his 20s. Do you know what it is to buy a house in Muncie now? if you're not putting money
Scary.
away, you're not putting money away for them.
I hope he moves to Texas.
Okay, that may be such, and that may be their option.
Yes.
But the reality is you go back all the way at the beginning of the speech, all the way at the beginning. My parents never drove a new car. All the kids' houses are bigger than theirs, and they put money away for each and every kid and each and every grandchild because our parents understood what fiscal responsibility was.
That's because your parents were Yankees.
There we go. There we go. No. Stefan, actually, my parents are Russian and Polish, so my kids, they're a mix between Yiddish and Russian and Polish.
What's the Yeki side of you then?
They come exactly half hour late. No.
But you are a grandson of something.
No. I married in. I'm not a blue blood.
Were you married into what? Which family?
Rav Schwab. My wife is Rav Schwab's granddaughter.
Got it. Okay, yeah, no, I knew there was a fun fact over there. Rabbi, one of the questions that we started asking our guests on the podcast are unique to the people, but it's also we like to ask the same question. We came up with another question based on our listeners, and one of those questions are, if you had a megaphone to scream out to the world, and it looks like you did it already 5 times on this program, so many things that we can learn from you and grow with you, but what would that one message be on that megaphone? Everybody's listening to Rabbi Ari Senter right now, who has a message that's important for everyone. Is that the message, what you were just saying, or can you solidify it? Is that something? Look in the camera, say it. What's that message?
So, by the way, I just wanted you to know, it's interesting. I asked Rebbetzin Sipora Heller the same question. So when Rebbetzin
I don't know what that is. Sorry.
Rebbetzin Sipora Heller is a phenomenal mechaneches in Eretz Yisrael.
Okay.
I was zeichet to host her for a Shabbos.
Beautiful.
So I'm going to give her answer, but then I'm going to give you mine.
Please.
Her answer was a fascinating answer. I said, Rebbetzin Sipora, same story. If you were able to whisper into the ears of my balabatim, what would you whisper into their ears? So she told over the following story. She said that there was the soldiers were evacuating Gaza. They were evacuating at that point in time, and Gush Katif. They were evacuating Gush Katif, and basically there was a father and son that were rebelling and fighting against it, and the soldier was crying because the soldier was following orders and had to
remove this person from their home.
He goes, please, you know.
I don't want to do this.
You know I don't want to do this, but you know we're going to evacuate it. He goes, please, just go. Why are you fighting? So the father said to the soldier, he says, I want my son to know 2 things, that there's things to fight for, and when the times are tough, I'm going to be standing right next to him. And no matter what the odds are, I'm going to be standing next to him fighting with him. So Rebbetzin Sipora Heller said, somehow, some way, get that message to the kids, that you will always be there for them. You will always stand beside them no matter how desperate, no matter how difficult the situation is. And second message, there's something that's always worth fighting for. This was her message, a beautiful message.
Very nice.
By the way, I remember the moment watching it unfold live.
Right.
And watching it. It's still giving me like...
Right, but you had that question, like, what are you doing? Come on, it's a waste of time. You thought it, but you know what?
I actually agree with her. I understood what you want to... Yeah, it's you got to pull me out of here.
Right, and that memory will be etched in their mind
Right,
forever.
it's like a teachable moment forever.
It's a teachable. That was her answer.
Did you repeat it to your congregation?
I did.
What did you whisper? It's funny. No. I asked you the question on a megaphone. What will you say? And your version is if you could whisper it.
Okay.
Like
you know what the difference is? No. Because maybe the difference is
that the right way to put the word in?
Maybe the difference is. Okay.
Say it.
One is because you just want to speak. The other one is you want it to be heard.
You want to listen. You want it to be heard?
You want it to be heard. But okay. What would I...
Okay, I took it.
No, I'm good.
I'm good. I'm in the hot seat.
What would... Oh, you're in the hot seat. Well, I like the socks, though. They're very cool.
Thank you. Bees fascinate me.
Bees fascinate... Then you should be interviewing my brother. My brother's a beekeeper.
What?
Sure. You didn't know that?
Which brother?
Danny. My brother Danny is a beekeeper.
That's what he does?
No, Danny does that like 100 things. Danny has a business card that has like 50 different things. One of his 50 hobbies is being.
How many brothers are you?
There were 4 altogether. My oldest brother passed away.
I'm sorry.
There's my brother Danny and my youngest brother Heinz, who's a Rosh Hashiva
in Israel. He's the Rosh Hashiva. You heard of Centers?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so going back to if I had a megaphone, what would be my message to the people?
Or if you could whisper in all of our listeners.
Okay, if I could whisper, first would be is the following: is Yiddishkeit is enjoyable, Torah is enjoyable, life is good. Don't complicate it. Now, there's an expression that we all accustomed to when we were growing up called Torah Lishma, Torah for its own purposes. I believe it's the Eglei Tal, says it's a misnomer. People think that means we've got to learn even though I don't enjoy it. He says, no, life is about finding the part of Torah that you do enjoy. In order that it should be Lishma, that it could be Torah, it could be a guiding light. So first thing, the megaphone is stop with this perception that everything's difficult and everything's challenging. Life is good. And now here's the short message, a bumper sticker. Be the person you want your child to be. Because in the end, going back to Rabbi Shaya Cohn, 90% of what our kids learn is by what we model. Be the person you really want your kid to be.
Wow.
Love that.
Wow.
You know what I learned from this podcast? You know what my takeaway was?
I talk too much.
No, you're awesome. You're awesome. By the way, I can see why your congregants love you. You're very chilled. You're very down to earth. You're very easy to talk to.
You don't take a paycheck?
You don't take a paycheck?
To me, that's number one. I don't
You're
know.
not any stress on anybody.
Yeah.
You're not another mouth to feed. You're
I am
actually
stressed.
independent.
No, I create stress. Don't worry about it.
That's fantastic. But what I took away from this whole podcast, I had an epiphany. I had while you said it, you slipped it in there, you didn't even notice, but you called it Costco instead of Costco.
Okay.
I always know it as Costco. I always wondered, what the heck is Costco? Where'd they come with that name? It's not Costco. It's Costco. Okay. That's what it is.
There we go.
That's what it came
Everybody
with the name.
gained
And
something
eventually it
from it.
became Costco.
Poor guy. He's been thinking about this for 20 minutes.
And simply put, that's my dyslexia
I love
mispronouncing it. It's Costco.
I love it. I love it. Amazing. I learned something new today.
That is great. Rabbi, we're going to have to wrap up, although I have to tell you, I can do this for hours. I haven't spoken about a lot of things that are on my list here, but one of those things were Ben & Jerry's. I'm happy we
So when am I getting invited back?
You know what? That's a good question. I appreciate that.
Round 2.
Before I ask you to come back, I want to ask you if you had to pick someone just like Uri picked you. And I'm so happy that we finally did this, by the way.
Yeah.
Uri picked Rabbi Senter, and Rabbi Senter is on the podcast. It happened within a few weeks. It's amazing. So I'm happy about that. Rabbi, let's keep that train going. Give me somebody who you think would add value to our growth-oriented mission of our podcast, someone can learn from, someone that is meaningful, someone that's bringing growth to this world, someone that's helping make change to this world. That's really what this podcast has become, thank God. So who would you recommend?
So there are a number of people, but I have my mentors, Robert Dinsky, Robert Willig. These are people. But
Whoa, you get Robert Dinsky on his hot seat?
I probably not, maybe, but I think the person, and you all know him, Kivi Perlman. Kivi Perlman was a Talmud of mine, and I actually love him like a son. Kivi.
Any of the Perlmans, and you have the world's attention, by the way.
Right. So, but
Just so we all
but
know.
if
You know
you
who
ask
this
me
is?
I know all the
specifically,
Perlmans.
you ask me
Sonny Perlman.
No, yeah, specifically.
Oh, we had Sonny Perlman.
Yes.
No,
yes.
so but if you specifically, and you can tell Kivi that I told him because
No, you're going to have to call him and ask him for us.
Has Kivi ever been on Sonny's podcast?
Kivi
I think
has
so.
been.
He's not going to come on ours before he goes
No,
on Sonny.
Kiwi,
No, he
Kiwi has
has.
already surpassed that in his life. He's been on Sonny's, I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but I have to tell you, I was
Yeah, don't worry,
roommates in school.
let's see what happens.
Yeah,
We'll give it a shot.
I was roommates with Ellie Perlman in school. Sonny Perlman has been a mentor of mine.
Hey, Rabbi, how are you?
Hi, Kivi. Be careful what you. Be careful what you say out loud, Kivi. I'm right now on a podcast, and they asked me who is somebody that you would want, that you think that would be beneficial for them to interview. I said, you know what? There's a young man that I love as a son, and so that's the. So no, but Kivi now. So they're not interviewing you, but can you just, you know what? This is very inappropriate for me, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Kivi, why do we have a special relationship?
Because I feel loved by you. I feel seen by you, and I care deeply about you. I love the person you are, and you've always been the kindest man to me.
Okay, so Kivi, you can take the check that I sent to you. Cash it now.
I don't need to take anything. This is the honest truth.
I'm teasing.
Okay, Michael, take the phone, schedule.
So Kivi, hold on 1 second. Here.
Kiwi, it's Michael Greenfield. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Amazing. The rabbi selected you, so I think you were already on Sonny's podcast, right?
Yeah, a couple of times, Sonny. Yeah,
Okay, good. So you know what it's like. That's amazing.
for sure. Yeah.
Kivi, you'll do it once with them alone, then we'll do it together. Because there would be, to me, that would be.
I'll certainly do it so we can do it together.
Okay, Kiwi.
Ooh, I like the path this is taking, by the way.
All
Thank
right.
you, Kiwi. I appreciate it.
Kiwi,
Hatzlacha.
Kiwi, I'm going to give you a call later. Kiwi, I love you. I miss you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
What a beautiful compliment
Wow.
to you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I mean, someone to say that right initially, like, you know,
Also, what a nice relationship that was. Yeah. That's heartwarming. We should have more of that.
I have to tell you, Ushi, I've sat in Rabbi Senter's house way past midnight and many times in my life dealing with community discussions and topics, and it was such a pleasure to have you here. And our conversations are always so meaningful. They're always growth-oriented. We always learn from each other.
And it was so educational. I knew so little about the whole Hechsheris world,
And-
but I have a little bit better perspective on it now.
Also,
It's
the
an-
energy in your
yeah.
house, your wife, the Rebbitzin,
Okay,
an
so
amazing
yeah,
human being.
Right. So I can't end without that. The reality is, I have to come home tonight to realize that. Let's be real. No, the reality is, and all rabbis sitting in this position, in the end, it's almost unfair because very often we get the fanfare and we get the appreciation. And the reality, the people who do the Mesiras Nefesh, when Kiwi would, or Stefan and Talmidim would show up at 2 minutes before Shabbos, by the way, you're coming in for the meal, or they're taking us to the latest hours of the night. It's our wives.
Yeah.
It's our wives that are doing it in reference to the chinuch of the kids, and there's a tremendous amount of appreciation.
Shout out to her.
Shout out to her. That I'm going to end. I want to tell you end with this story, and then we can go from there. And this is partially why I appreciate this young man, because reality, he's not a congregant. In reality, he's not, and it has nothing to do with yeshiva. So I used to play ice hockey, and I'm coming out of the ice hockey rink, which I happened to play with my balabatim. I play ice hockey with him. I was part of that initial starting of that whole league. So we're coming out of the ice hockey rink, and we're stepping over a bunch of people that are sitting on the stoop. And I step over it, and there's a guy sitting there. He's got a bunch of earrings, and he's got a stud over here, and so on and so forth. And I step over him, and I recognize him. I see him, and I call him by his first name. We'll leave whatever the name is for a moment. He turns around, and he goes, "Rabbi!" And I give him a big hug, and we continue walking. And my son walks over and he goes, "Daddy, you have no friends. You have 0 friends in the world." I go, "What do you mean? I have no, everybody's my friend. They're all my friends. I love everybody." He goes, "Daddy, you have no friends." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Daddy, even he calls you Rabbi." So, okay, so then continue the whole discussion then in the family. Does Daddy have any friends? Nobody, no friends. So I'm bike riding with my son-in-law up near Harriman State Park. And I'm biking, and I'm a little bit behind him because I've got a couple extra pounds, a couple extra years, and a couple extra miles on me. And a big SUV drives up next to me, passes me, then pulls back, and then rolls down the window. And then my son was like all worried. And he looks at me, he goes, "Rabbi, are you okay?" It was an African American in the car. I don't remember where I knew him from. I have no idea. And he just continues on. He goes, "You really have no friends." So Stefan knows me from the days when my name was, what was my name, Stefan? Shushu, you remember that? So you know what? To me in life, the truth is I enjoy the friendships. And the friendships are what keeps us going. And even though I may be called rabbi, at that point in time, I appreciate the reality is I'll end with this. Rav Noah Weinberg said, they have to know that you care before they care about what you know. In the end, that's the different role of a rabbi today. They have to really know that you care.
Right.
And I hope that that's the message.
I'm excited to have you back again, Rabbi. This has been an amazing, amazing podcast. Thank you to all our subscribers. Please don't forget to comment, like, get involved. Thank you to the Prime Source production team and all our sponsors. And let's keep growing. Until next time. Amazing.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow.
Happy
That
to-
was enjoyable.